Enid Blyton's Mystery and Adventure. The Secret Island. Read by Amanda Root. Mike, Laura, and Peggy Arnold were standing on the quay next to their father's yacht, trying to be brave. They were proud of Thaddeus because he was a brilliant explorer, but they missed him so much when he went away. Photographers were snapping pictures of the yacht and the family before Thaddeus set off to sail round the world. Thaddeus Arnold posed for one final shot, then gave his children an enormous hug. "Be good," he said. "Don't drive Nanny Betts round the bend." Thaddeus knew the children would be safe with Nanny Betts. She'd been with the family since Thaddeus was a boy. He waved goodbye to them all and headed towards Anticipate, his yacht. Suddenly, a young woman with short blonde hair and a determined chin pushed past the photographers. A camera was slung over her arm. "Ah," said Thaddeus. "Charlotte Clancy, I presume, my very own photojournalist?" "Yeah, sorry I'm late." She turned to gaze at Anticipate. "It's not very big, is it?" "You can always take the QE2 if you prefer," snapped Thaddeus. Charlotte snorted and hurled her bag into Thaddeus's arms. Then she stalked towards the yacht. With Nanny Betts in charge, things soon got back to normal at Peephole, the Arnolds' cliff-top home. The twins, Mike and Laura, were sitting on the garden steps, clutching a large atlas between them. Thaddeus had talked to the children on his mobile phone and given them his bearings so they could chart his progress on the map. "It's my turn," cried Mike, grabbing the bright stickers. "You did it last time," retorted Laura. Nanny Betts walked by, carrying a basket of washing to hang on the line. "I think it is his turn, Laura," she said. Mike started to place the stickers along his dad's route. "Someday I'll go sailing with Dad." "So will I," said Laura. "He wouldn't take you. Women are bad luck on boats." "That's stupid," scoffed Laura. "He took that photographer because her paper paid for the expenses for the trip, and—" He broke off as he heard a terrified shriek from Peggy. "Mike! Laura! Quick!" The two children raced round the house. Lying on the ground was their beloved Nanny Betts, not moving, not breathing. Lord Foggo, the president of the Royal Society of Explorers, was making a transatlantic call from his impressive office. "Peach," said a tinny voice in his ear. "Ah," said Lord Foggo. "To whom am I speaking?" "Dwight T. Peach III, editor of Scoop Magazine, New York City. And who are you, buddy?" "Lord Foggo, president of the Explorers Club. I have an urgent message for Thaddeus Arnold." "No one's allowed to contact Arnold but us. Scoop Magazine. It's in his contract." "That's why I'm calling you. His old nanny's died and his children are being shunted off to live with their aunt and uncle. They're a bad lot, I'm afraid. Thaddeus can't stand them. You'd better let him know." "You want me to interrupt his world record attempt," sneered Peach, "to tell him that some old lady died?" "It's important," rapped out Lord Foggo. "His children are at risk." "So's the money that my magazine is putting up for his trip, buddy." Lord Foggo took a deep breath. "Just give him the message, pal." "I will," said Peach, "when I can reach him. Right now he's in the middle of a typhoon." It was the worst typhoon Thaddeus had ever encountered. The yacht pitched violently on giant waves. Water lashed the deck, and the wind ripped the sail from its mast. "She's going too fast," bellowed Thaddeus. "Get to stern and clip your lifeline onto the push pit. That way, whatever happens, you'll always be attached to the boat, okay?" "Right," cried Charlotte. Her eyes were huge with terror. Great sprays beat at them as they struggled to clip on their lifelines. They looked up and saw a wave so vast it was like an enormous wall heading straight for them. Charlotte screamed as the wall of water crashed into the boat, obliterating it, sucking it down, down, down. Then there was blackness. In the calm that followed the storm, Thaddeus and Charlotte lay sprawled on a tropical shore. The beach was littered with wreckage. A torn sail flapped in the gentle breeze. It was some hours before Thaddeus came to, before his exhausted body could sit up. His mouth was burning from the salt water he'd swallowed, and his lips felt swollen. He leaned over to check Charlotte's breathing, then, leaving her to recover, he set off in search of drinking water. First, he looked among the wreckage for a water canister. No luck. He found one, but its top had been smashed off. There was a box of tools, though, and several flares still safe in their waterproof packet. Slightly cheered, Thaddeus picked up the canister and headed round the island to search for fresh water. An hour later, Charlotte came to. She was panic-stricken at first, wondering if Thaddeus had survived. Then she caught sight of him, approaching along the shoreline. "I've been round the island," he called. "There's no sign of life." Charlotte sank down on the sand in despair. "But I found a source of fresh water, and there's fish in the sea. We've got some tools and some flares, so if I were you, I'd show a little gratitude." Charlotte glared at him. "You expect me to be grateful to some cook who nearly drowns me, and then maroons me on a desert island? Have you any idea where we are?" "Sorry, Charlie," replied Thaddeus cheerfully. "Afraid not." "Listen, only my friends call me Charlie. To you, I'm Charlotte." "Fine," said Thaddeus, shrugging. "Anyway, the point is, that typhoon drove us way off course, and as I didn't get a sound fix the previous day... But you did get off a distress call?" "Ah, no. I'm afraid the electrics had packed up by that stage." "So, you don't know where we are, and neither does anyone else?" She looked at Thaddeus in horror. "We could be stuck here for years." The day of Nanny Bet's funeral arrived. Aunt Harriet and Uncle Henry turned up to take charge of the children, and they weren't sympathetic in the slightest. "Stop snivelling," snapped Aunt Harriet. "We all have to go sometime." "But I loved her," wailed Laura, "and so did Daddy." Uncle Henry broke in harshly. "Then it's a pity he didn't stay behind to look after her." "Well, as soon as he gets back," Peggy burst out. "He's not coming back," growled Henry. "His boat capsized in the middle of the ocean. End of story." The children glared at him through their tears. "We believe he's still alive," said Mike. "Laura has a feeling about these things." "What rubbish!" snapped Uncle Henry. "Come on, we're leaving." As the car slowly drew away from Peephole, Peggy turned to take one last look at the lovely white house, wondering if she'd ever see it again. The funeral service was a sombre affair, almost unbearably sad for the children. As soon as it was over, Uncle Henry and Aunt Harriet bundled them into the car and headed for their farmhouse. The Arnold children hated their new home. The house was run down and shabby. Piles of junk lay in the farmyard. When they could get away on their own, Peggy, Mike and Laura ran down to the stream at the edge of the farmland to talk together. "It's horrible," burst out Mike. "They treat us like slaves." "I know," soothed Peggy. "We'll just have to make the best of it until Dad gets back." They still believed that their father would somehow return to them. "But we don't know how long..." Laura broke off and looked over her shoulder uneasily. "What's that? I saw someone. Over there." The three children looked about them, but saw nothing. "We'd best be getting back," said Peggy. "Come on." As they hurried to the farmhouse, a boy's face peered out from the trees. He stared thoughtfully after them, then he melted back into the wood. Aunt Harriet had posted up on her kitchen door a long list of chores for the children to do. Laura had to scrub the floor every morning. She was on her hands and knees, miserably sloshing soapy water around, when Prince, the farm dog, slipped into the kitchen. "Hello, Prince," said Laura. "Want me to rub your tummy again?" Happily, Prince rolled over, just as Aunt Harriet burst angrily through the door. "That dog isn't allowed in the house," she snapped. She aimed a kick at him. Poor Prince jumped backwards and fled, knocking over the bucket of water. "That's it," exploded Aunt Harriet. "Clean up this mess, Laura, and then go straight to your room. None of you will have any supper tonight." "It wasn't my fault," Laura thought rebelliously. She mopped up the spilled water, then trudged upstairs to tell Peggy and Mike the bad news. The 3 children all gathered in the girls' bedroom. "Prince couldn't help knocking that bucket of water over," Laura said sadly. "And now we'll all have to go to bed without supper." "Aunt Harriet's meals are awful anyway," said Mike bravely. He wandered over to stare out of the window. "Hey!" he whispered excitedly. "There's a boy in the yard." The girls joined Mike at the window and peered out. Just then, a battered old car rumbled into view, and the boy ran back into the trees. "Uncle Henry's home," said Mike gloomily. "Let's get to bed," said Peggy, "or we'll be in even worse trouble." Uncle Henry entered the kitchen just as Aunt Harriet was taking a large meat pie out of the oven. "I've sent the children to bed without supper," she said crossly. Uncle Henry looked grim. "What have they done now?" "It was Laura. She deliberately knocked a bucket of water all over the floor." "Thaddeus was always too soft on them," said Henry, sitting down at the table. "Well, they won't be pampered here. How'd you do at the solicitor's?" "Quite well," said Henry. "We get the court to issue a certificate presuming Thaddeus dead. When that's done, we become the children's legal guardians. Then we can sell their house and use the money in Thaddeus's bank account to buy old Luke's farm." "Wonderful!" enthused Harriet, serving her husband with a generous slice of pie. "But what about the boy Jack, old Luke's grandson? What will happen to him if his home goes?" "That's old Luke's concern," snapped Henry. "Nothing to do with us." One morning, when Peggy and Mike were working in the farmyard, Laura ran up to them, clutching a newspaper. "Look," she cried. "There's a picture of Dad. The headline says, 'Famous Explorer Drowned.' But I know Dad's alive. I've seen him in my dreams. He'll come back and take us home soon." "Not if they sell your house, he won't," said a voice. Then the strange boy who'd been hanging around the farmyard strolled across to them. "Who are you?" asked Peggy. "I'm Jack. Your uncle's going to sell your house to buy my granddad's farm." Peggy was horror-struck. "How do you know?" "I heard them talking about it. They made a deal." "Where will you go then?" asked Laura. "Off on my own," said Jack, shrugging. "I've got a secret place." "Really?" asked Mike. "I wish we could come." Jack shook his head. "It'd be too tough for you." "No, it wouldn't," said Peggy. "We've done a lot of camping." Suddenly, all the 3 children wanted to do was escape, get away from the farm and its cruel owners. That evening, as the children sat down to supper, Uncle Henry glared at them. "I've seen you kids talking to that boy, Jack. You keep away from him. He's no good. When old Luke sells up next door, he'll put Jack in a home." Mike looked at his uncle innocently. "Who's going to buy Luke's farm then, Uncle Henry?" "Me, of course. We'll have a tidy bit of land then." "Yes," thought Peggy savagely, "and we won't have peephole." Aunt Harriet helped herself to potatoes and asked, "How's your new dog doing, Henry?" "Couldn't ask for better. Judge understands every call I make, whereas Prince, that dog's worse than bone idle. I'm going to put him down." "Oh, no!" wailed Laura. "I'm not wasting money buying food for a dog that won't work, so I'm getting rid of him, tonight." Laura jumped up. "How can you do that to Prince?" she stormed. "I hate you!" Then she ran out of the room. Mike and Peggy leapt to their feet, eyes blazing, and raced out after Laura. They knew they had to find Prince before nightfall, They ran through the fields, whistling for him and calling his name. "We haven't tried the barn yet," cried Peggy. "Come on." Pushing open the huge barn door, they heard whimpering coming from a sack in the corner. "Prince!" cried the girls. They hurried over and wrestled with the knot tying the sack. In a moment it was off, and Prince was free, licking their hands and faces in delight. "Oh, Prince," murmured Peggy, burying her face in his warm fur. "How could Uncle Henry be so cruel? And where will we hide you now?" The next day, Mike, Laura, Peggy and Prince followed Jack down to the woods at the edge of the fields. The Arnold children had told Jack that Prince would be shot if they didn't find him somewhere to hide, so Jack decided that they could all escape with him to his secret place. When they reached a clearing beside the lake, Jack pointed proudly. "There it is, our secret island." "Wow," breathed Mike. "It's the perfect place to hide. It's completely deserted," said Jack. "When can you leave?" "Hold on a minute, Jack," said Peggy bossily. "We'll need to take food with us, and candles and blankets, all sorts of things. When we go back to the farmhouse, we can make a list." Mike turned to Jack. "What about you?" he said. "I've had my stuff collected for ages," said Jack, shrugging. "So, when do we take off?" "How about tomorrow?" asked Peggy. "Uncle Henry and Aunt Harriet always go off on a Saturday evening." "Right," said Jack. "We'll meet up here tomorrow at 7. The next night, with Prince trotting beside him, Jack carried his supplies through the woods and loaded them into the rowing boat he kept hidden beside the lake. Then he sat down to wait. Meanwhile, Mike, Peggy and Laura were washing up after another of Aunt Harriet's unappetizing suppers. While preparing the meal, they had managed to squirrel away all manner of stuff from Aunt Harriet's larder. Peggy nudged Laura, who went up to Aunt Harriet. "Thank you for the lovely supper," she lied. Then she gave a huge yawn. "I'm tired," said Mike, also yawning. "Then it's an early night for you two," said Peggy in a motherly way. "Are you going anywhere nice this evening, Aunt Harriet?" "No," said Uncle Henry abruptly. "We're staying in." The children exchanged horrified glances. How would they escape now? They made their way to the girls' bedroom and threw themselves down on the beds in despair. Time ticked away. Jack was waiting anxiously by the lakeside. He looked at his watch. 7:10. "They're late, Prince," he muttered angrily. Back at the farmhouse, the children were about to try sneaking out of the bedroom window when there was a shriek from downstairs. "Peggy! I want to speak to you now!" Peggy went reluctantly downstairs. "Yes, Aunt Harriet?" she said sweetly. "Is anything wrong?" "There certainly is," snapped Aunt Harriet. "Several things are missing from my larder. I know it wasn't you because I check your room every day. It must have been Jack. I've seen him skulking about. Have you ever let him in?" "No, Aunt Harriet," said Peggy meekly. The kitchen door opened and Uncle Henry stamped in. "That Prince is a devil," he complained angrily. "He's managed to escape from the sack he was tied up in. Well, good riddance to bad rubbish, I say." Peggy looked at the floor, trying not to giggle. "Aren't you ready yet?" Uncle Henry snarled at his wife. "We have to go." "I thought you said you were staying in tonight," said Peggy, hope flaring inside her. "We changed our minds," growled Uncle Henry. He marched out of the kitchen, Aunt Harriet scurrying behind him. Peggy ran up to the others. "Quick," she hissed. "They're going out after all." The children gathered up their blankets and provisions. Then as soon as they heard their uncle's car draw away from the farmhouse, they raced downstairs and pounded along to the lake as fast as they could. "Where have you been?" Jack exclaimed as Prince barked happily. "It's a long story," sighed Peggy. Excitedly, the kids loaded their bags into the boat. Then they all clambered in and set off for the secret island. The sun was setting as they drew near the shore. The island was thick with tall trees, and over it hung a full moon, casting shadows with its cold light. A huge owl floated like a ghost through the trees. "I'm not sure if I like this," quavered Laura. It looks a bit spooky." "It's just strange," Jack reassured her. "You'll love it, you'll see." The boat reached the shore, and the children jumped out, hauling it onto the shingle. "Shall we unload?" asked Mike. "Only the blankets," said Jack. "The food's safe in the boat. We should look for somewhere safe to sleep." The 4 children disappeared into the darkening woods. Nobody saw a black-robed figure peering round an old oak tree, following them with his eyes. The next morning found Uncle Henry and Aunt Harriet having breakfast on their own in the dingy kitchen. "What's the matter with those kids?" grumbled Uncle Henry. "It's not like them to be so sluggardly." He got to his feet and stamped out of the door and up the stairs to investigate. 2 minutes later, he stormed back. "Harriet," he said, "the bedrooms are empty. The kids, they've gone." Over on the secret island, the campfire had gone out, and Peggy woke up shivering. She glanced over to the cove where they'd moored the boat last night. Then she gasped. The boat wasn't there. "Wake up, everyone," groaned Peggy. "The boat's gone." "All our food's in the boat," wailed Laura. Mike looked around. "Jack's gone as well." "No, he hasn't," said Jack's calm voice from among the trees. "And the boat's perfectly safe." He strolled over. "I've hidden it in the reeds." "What about the food and stuff?" asked Mike. "I've put it all in a dry cave that I found, and there's a stream with good fresh water. Come on, I'll show you." Jack led the way to the cave through thick undergrowth. "There it is. The entrance is hidden by leaves." Jack switched on his torch, and the children and Prince made their way inside. It was like a tall stone tunnel. No light penetrated from anywhere. The torch illuminated the bags of provisions that Jack had stacked against the walls. "What's down there?" Mike pointed down into the black depths of the cave. Jack gave a shrug that was half a shiver. "Nothing. A dead end." "This is scary," said Laura in a small voice. Suddenly, Mike lunged at her with a spooky wail. "Ah!" she screamed. "I don't like it here!" The children trooped out into the sunshine, Prince following. A few seconds later, there was a strange creaking noise from the back of the cave, and what Jack had called the dead end swung open. Lit by a ghoulish red light, the hooded monk stepped forward, staring after them. Across the world, on the beautiful desert island, Thaddeus and Charlotte were becoming accustomed to living as castaways. Thaddeus was actually enjoying it. They'd rigged up a makeshift shelter to sleep under. Thaddeus had learned to fish in the shallow waves, using a sharp-pointed stick as a spear. He'd managed to make a fire with the help of a bit of glass and some dry grass, so he was able to cook the fish, though not always successfully. Charlotte was sitting glumly beside the tiny cooking fire when suddenly an acrid smell hit her nostrils. "Hey, Thaddeus!" she exclaimed. "The fish is burning!" "Sorry, I was miles away, thinking about the children." He shifted the fish away from the embers of the fire with a stick. Charlotte gave him a challenging stare. "Well, if you're worried about them, let's stop daydreaming and get off this island. What we need is a boat." Thaddeus burst out laughing. "Of course we need a boat, but I can't build a boat without the right tools." "All right," conceded Charlotte. "Then what's wrong with a raft?" "Plenty." "In other words, you haven't got the guts for it, Thaddeus Arnold, great adventurer." His pride was hurt. "Listen, lady, if you're stupid enough to go out there on a raft, I'll build one." "Right," said Charlotte. "You do that." The next day, Thaddeus went searching for raft-building materials. He heaved a huge piece of driftwood onto his shoulders and staggered along the beach. Charlotte trotted beside him, snapping photos. Impatiently, Thaddeus dropped the wood and said, "I thought you were supposed to be off collecting water." I have been. It took me an hour to get this. She produced a plastic bottle only half full of water. Your stream has turned into a trickle. Why didn't you tell me? If we lose our water supply, we're in trouble. Then the sooner we get this raft finished, the better. She walked over to the piece of wood that Thaddeus had dumped. Come on, I'll help you. Easier with two of us, isn't it? He grinned. On the secret island, the children woke to fine autumn weather. Jack and Peggy prepared a breakfast of blackberries and pancakes. Everyone ate ravenously. Then they set about their tasks for the day. And Prince enjoyed himself, splashing in the water, rolling on the grass, and best of all, chasing rabbits. Lunch was very tasty. 2 fish that Jack had caught, and potatoes baked in the embers of the fire. After they'd eaten their fill, everyone stretched out in the afternoon sun and dozed. Then they went for a swim. "This is the life!" shouted Mike, leaping into the water. "Total freedom!" It was Laura who first noticed it was getting dark. "Let's go back to the camp," she said nervously, "and build up the fire." Nobody argued. They prepared a quick, cold supper and settled down, wrapped in their blankets. "Jack," said Peggy, "could there be anyone else on the island?" "Why do you ask?" "Oh, last night I suddenly woke up and I had the strangest feeling that someone was watching me." Jack smiled. "Probably your guardian angel." Peggy lay down and closed her eyes. Jack, however, stayed sitting. And if Peggy had seen the troubled look on his face, she might not have gone off to sleep so peacefully. Meanwhile, Uncle Henry had been driving about, looking for the children. Aunt Harriet appeared at the door as soon as he pulled up at the farmhouse. "Well?" she shouted anxiously. "No sign of those kids," he groaned. "I've looked everywhere." Aunt Harriet wrung her hands. "Henry, we should go to the police." Uncle Henry glared at his wife. "We go to the police now, and we kiss goodbye to the bank advancing us 1 penny. No kids, no cash." From inside the farmhouse, the phone rang shrilly, and Henry hurried to answer it. "Hello? Who is it?" he shouted into the receiver. "I'm Dwight T. Peach III. "Oh." Henry became more polite. "You some kind of lord or something?" Peach chuckled. "No, sir. I'm the editor of Scoop magazine, New York City. Your brother-in-law, Thaddeus Arnold, was under contract to us. We're all cut up about the tragic news, and I'd like to interview the kids and take a few pictures." "Oh," gulped Uncle Henry. "That's a problem?" asked Peach. "There'd be some money in it." "Oh," said Henry, suddenly very keen. "The thing is, they're not here just now, but when they get back, I'll call you." "Terrific," gushed Peach. "I'll send you an exclusive contract to sign on their behalf. We don't want people to take advantage of those poor fatherless kids, do we?" Uncle Henry gulped again. "No, absolutely not." "Good man. I knew we could do business together." Peach put down the receiver in triumph. Uncle Henry was his type of guy. Henry couldn't stop thinking about all the money he could make if only he could find the children. He rummaged about for his ancient binoculars, then headed down to the fields. Leaning over the gate, he scanned the countryside. "What are you at there, young Henry?" said a croaky voice. Henry jumped slightly. "Oh, it's you, Luke," he said. "I'm just looking for those kids." "Let them be," Luke said gruffly. "If Jack don't come home, that's his affair." Henry suddenly leaned forward eagerly. "What do you make of that thin column of smoke?" He passed old Luke the binoculars. "Looks like it's coming from the middle of the lake." "Ah," said old Luke sagely. "That'll be the haunted island." "What do you mean?" "Well," said old Luke, enjoyably, "they do say this monk from the local monastery went mad, so they marooned him on the island and he lived there for 10 years. Till suddenly he disappeared, so they say. Leastways they say he disappeared. Only me and a mate went there once with a couple of lasses for a picnic. They spread out the grub and looked up and started screaming. And there he was, this monk, dressed all in black. Henry raised his binoculars once more. Haunted island? He mused. Can't be. Lord Foggo was worried about the welfare of the Arnold children. He'd had Peach on the phone, wanting to do a full-colour spread on them. He phoned the police and told them that he had no confidence that Henry could protect the children from the press. The chief constable promised to send someone over to the farmhouse, and when Henry got home, he saw a police car parked outside. Cursing, he went into the kitchen. "So the kids are out, are they?" P.C. Cooper was asking. "Well," said Aunt Harriet, "as a matter of fact," blustered Henry, striding into the room, "they've gone camping." "What? On their own?" asked P.C. Cooper. No." Henry looked even more shifty than usual. "They're, with my cousin George." P.C. Cooper looked doubtful. "Well, let me know when you hear from them, okay?" As the policeman strode out to his car, Uncle Henry and Aunt Harriet began to bicker. "You should have told P.C. Cooper that the children have run away," snapped Harriet. "In 5 minutes it'll be all round the town," snarled Henry. "We're supposed to be their guardians. That's why the bank's lending us money to buy old Luke's farm. If we don't find the kids, we won't get a penny." "All the more reason to tell the police," stormed Harriet. "They could conduct a proper search." "Don't worry. Soon as those kids run out of food, they'll be back." Uncle Henry was right. At that very moment, Jack and Mike were pushing the rowing boat out from the secret island to head over to the mainland for more provisions. Prince jumped into the boat, determined to accompany the boys. "No, Prince, out you get," said Mike. But Prince wouldn't budge. "What's the matter with him?" said Laura. "Just leave him," said Jack. "Let's go." He started rowing across to the other side. "Funny," said Peggy, waving. "Prince is usually so obedient." "They're going on a dangerous mission," said Laura. "He wants to protect them." The boys rowed safely across the lake, hid the boat in some reeds, then set off on their quest for food, with Prince close to heel. They found a sack and filled it with potatoes from the bin in the barn. Then Mike led the way into the hen house. The hens started squawking when they saw Prince. "Chickens, all crated up for the market," said Jack. "Let's take one of these. We'll have eggs every day." As they lifted a crate, the squawking got louder. "Get back to the boat, fast!" hissed Jack, and they started to run across the farmyard. "Stop or I'll fire!" yelled Uncle Henry, rushing at them through the darkness. He raised his shotgun and took aim. Prince bared his teeth. As Uncle Henry pulled the trigger, he leapt like a wolf, knocking Henry to the ground. The shotgun exploded into the air, and Prince bounded after the two boys. Aunt Harriet came running outside, shouting, "What on earth's going on?" "Thieves after our chickens," gasped Henry, getting to his feet. "Probably those gypsies." "They don't steal." "Rubbish. And where'd that dog come from?" "Well, I hate to say it, but it looked rather like Prince." "Nonsense," snarled Henry. "Prince ran away, didn't he?" "Wait a minute. Perhaps it wasn't gypsies. Perhaps it was those kids. Anyway, if they come back again, I'll be waiting." Over on the secret island, Peggy and Laura had heard the gunshot and were frightened for the boys. "They'll be lying dead somewhere," wailed Laura. "Don't be ridiculous," snapped Peggy. "Look!" Across the lake, they saw the boat drawing closer. They raced for the shore to help the boys haul the boat up onto the shingle. "We heard a gun!" cried Laura. "Prince knocked the gun out of Uncle Henry's hand," said Mike. "He was going to shoot you?" gasped Peggy. "Yes," said Jack, "but he didn't know who we were." Laura patted Prince. "I knew you'd save them." A sudden frantic clucking came from the boat. "Come on," said Jack. Will someone take this crate of chickens? P.C. Cooper turned up again and cornered Aunt Harriet and Uncle Henry in their kitchen. Have you heard from those kids yet? No, like I told you, they've gone camping, Henry blustered. Suddenly, Harriet stepped forward, wringing her hands. I've had enough of all this lying, she cried. Fact of the matter is, Constable, they've run away. And when was this? During the night of the 14th. Look, Constable, said Henry, children often run off. It's just a bit of fun as far as they're concerned. P.C. Cooper had had enough. He took a step towards Henry, eyes blazing. Fun? Don't you know what's going on in the world out there? Those kids, supposedly in your care, are at risk right now, and I, for one, intend to do something about it. You come with me.